looking to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. The death toll from the torrential rains and floods from the low-pressure area, shear line, and northeast monsoon that has affected a large part of the country since January 2 has climbed to 43. The Philippine Embassy has advised Filipinos in Israel to take precautions amid escalating tensions there. The Philippine Army said 3 of its search and rescue teams from the 5th Infantry Division are still searching for the Cessna 206 and its passengers who went missing in Isabela last week. And as Indonesia's capital Jakarta sinks at an alarming rate, the country's top architects are facing the daunting task of designing a new, sustainable, and green capital city in the middle of the world's oldest stretch of jungle. First in our news, the death toll from the torrential rains and floods from the low-pressure area, shear line, and northeast monsoon that has affected a large part of the country since January 2 has now climbed to 43. That according to the Office of Civil Defense today. Now, the agency's latest disaster bulletin said the figure includes 20 confirmed deaths, 9 from Zamboanga Peninsula, 7 from Eastern Visayas, 2 from Northern Mindanao, and 1 each from Mimaropa and Davao region. Another 23 fatalities are undergoing validation, 13 from Bicol, 6 from Northern Mindanao, 3 from Zamboanga Peninsula, and 1 from Soc-Sargen. Agriculture damage is now estimated at 1.05 billion pesos, while infrastructure damage is at 523.2 million pesos. A total of 1,888 houses have been damaged. Since January 3, back-to-back storms have killed several people as floodwater swept through houses, cut roads, and swamped crops. The Philippine Embassy in Israel had advised Filipinos to avoid going to the West Bank and other areas. Take a look. Now, the embassy said Filipinos should also avoid going to the following areas apart from Jericho, Hebron, and Bethlehem in the West Bank due to the ongoing tensions. So Jerusalem, Temple Mount, Damascus Gate, Herod's Gate, Al-Wad Road, Musrara Road, areas around East Jerusalem, areas near the border of Lebanon and Gaza, and the Golan Heights. The embassy is urging Filipinos to exercise caution and to refrain from going to crowded places in the meantime. Filipinos were also advised to be careful when using public transportation. The embassy also urged them to refrain from approaching Israeli security forces in sensitive areas and to follow instructions from them and the Home Front Command. For any emergency, they are urged to contact the nearest embassy. The Israeli Security Cabinet announced measures to revoke certain rights of terrorist families after 2 attacks in East Jerusalem, one of which killed 7 people near a synagogue. A meeting late Saturday, the Security Cabinet decided on a series of steps to exact a price from terrorists and those who support them, according to the Prime Minister. Let's listen in.
אנחנו התאמנו הבוקר את ביתו של המחבל שביצע את הפיגוע הנפשע בירושלים, ובהמשך ביתו ייהרס. החלטנו על שלילת זכויות בביטוח לאומי ממשפחות תומכות טרור, ובממשלה נדון היום על צעדים נוספים, ביניהם שלילת תעודות זהות ושלילת תושבות ממשפחות מחבלים תומכות טרור.
The measures announced are in line with proposals from his far-right political partners, which enabled him to return to power at the end of December, following elections the previous month. They are likely to apply to Palestinians with Israeli nationality, Israeli Arabs, and Palestinians with resident status in annexed East Jerusalem. Friday's synagogue attack, one of the deadliest in Jerusalem in years, was carried out by a 21-year-old Palestinian resident of East Jerusalem. Hours later, a 13-year-old Palestinian boy shot and wounded a father and son in East Jerusalem on Saturday. Now, at the start of the meeting, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised a strong and swift response to the Palestinian attacks over the past 2 days. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, meanwhile, is due in Jerusalem today to discuss steps for de-escalation. Meanwhile, Israelis take part in the funeral procession of victims of Friday's deadly shooting outside the synagogue in East Jerusalem. First, let's listen in.
There are a lot of people here from all the country. A lot of people knew that guy, but a lot of people just didn't know, and everyone comes here and gathers around in order to pay respect for the dead people.
This is my country. I'm supposed to be safe here, not be afraid. So I'm trying to show it to everyone that if someone will try to come and I don't know, hurt me or something, I'll be like, don't touch me, stay away. But you can't protect yourself from a gun. It's not something you can do.
Israel's police chief Kobi Shabtai called the shooting in the Nevi Yaakov area one of the worst attacks they have encountered in recent years. It also fell on International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Police said that around 8:15 p.m. local time, a terrorist arrived at the synagogue in the Nevi Yaakov Boulevard in Jerusalem and proceeded to shoot at a number of people in the area. Police said 7 civilians were pronounced dead. 3 additional civilians were injured, and they said the gunman fled the scene in a car but was quickly tracked down and killed in an exchange of fire with police. Police have identified the gunman as a Palestinian resident of East Jerusalem, which was annexed by Israel following the 1967 Six-Day War. The surging violence comes a month after a new government led by veteran Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took power. And nearly 2 years after Myanmar's military coup, the UN rights chief warned that the country had plunged into catastrophe, calling for the military to be brought under civilian oversight. Take a look.
2 years after the Myanmar military launched a coup against the democratically elected government, the country has sunk deeper than ever into crisis and has undergone a wholesale regression in human rights. By nearly every feasible measurement and in every area of human rights, economic, social and cultural, as much as civil and political, Myanmar has profoundly regressed. Despite clear legal obligations for the military to protect civilians in the conduct of hostilities, there has been consistent disregard for the related rules of international law. Far from being spared, civilians have been the actual targets of attacks, victims of targeted and indiscriminate artillery barrages and airstrikes, extrajudicial executions, the use of torture, and the burning of whole villages. According to credible sources, at least 2,890 people have died at the hands of the military and others working with them, of whom at least 767 were initially taken into custody. This is almost certainly an underestimation of the number of civilians killed as a result of military. 2 of the critical conditions that were agreed to cease all violence and to allow humanitarian access have not been met. In fact, we've seen the opposite. Violence has spiralled out of control and humanitarian access has been severely restricted. Restoring respect for human rights is a key to ending the crisis, to end this situation where Myanmar's generals are trying to prop up through brute force a decades-old system in which they answer to no one but themselves. How can a military that purports to defend the country have brought their own people from all parts of Myanmar's rich and diverse society to such a point of desperation? Last month, the Security Council united to adopt a path-breaking resolution that demands an immediate end to the violence, among other urgent steps. Now, it is time for the world to come together to take common actions to stop the killing, protect the people of Myanmar, and to ensure respect for their universal human rights.
And just to remind you, the reason why it's so hard to confirm figures are because Myanmar's military has very effectively cut off lines of communication throughout the country in several areas of the country where they have been most active militarily and where they've been burning villages and civilian structures rather intensively for the last 14 months. They've cut off all internet and mobile data services as well. So getting information out of these areas is extremely difficult. I would just indicate that 767 out of that number of verified deaths, the 2,890 deaths, that's 28%. So 28% of the people that we know for certain that we can put a name and a place to their death.
Back here in the country, the Philippine Army said 3 of its search and rescue teams from the 5th Infantry Division are still searching for the Cessna 206 and its passengers who went missing in Isabela last week. Now, these teams are from the 95th Infantry Battalion. That is according to Army spokesperson Colonel Cerces Trinidad in a statement. Now, the plane went missing after departing Kawayan Airport in Isabela on the afternoon of January 24. Trinidad said 2 squads composed of 9 personnel and 10 personnel each are scouring the hinterlands of Barangay Sapinit in Divalacan, while the 3rd squad, composed of 15 personnel, is currently searching the jungles of Barangay Dicaruyan, also in Divalacan. The Cagayan Valley Regional Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council has since launched extensive search and rescue efforts for the 6 persons, including the pilot, who were aboard the missing plane. The reported growth of the Philippine economy in 2022 is a good start for the Marcos administration, according to an economist. Lawyer Franklin Quijano, also the chairperson of the National Commission of Senior Citizens and former economics professor at the San Carlos University in Cebu, said 7.6% economic growth last year is a good indicator for the current administration's performance benchmark. Let's listen in.
Looking at it positively, baka naman magandang pangitain itong 7.6 as a performance benchmark. Dahil itong administrasyon na ito, we have to perform well para ma-exceed.
Now, Mr. Quijano, however, acknowledged that much remains to be done in the coming years for the current administration to sustain economic growth. He also cited that the occurrence of natural disasters has a negative impact or negative economic implication, saying it's also a contributor to the country's gross domestic product. The government's digital transformation bid and infrastructure development may help maintain the positive momentum of the Philippine economy. Meanwhile, Mr. Quijano also proposed the utilization and proper management of natural resources to enable the Marcos administration to achieve its economic agenda. And Assistant National Statistician Vivian Ilarina, who also joined the forum, noted that the Philippine Statistics Authority is currently developing satellite accounts to allow the government to see the stock of natural resources in the country. Let's listen in.
We are the 5th mineralized country in the world. We have so much in mineral resources, even under our seas. Kaya nga, nakikipag-away yung iba kasi maraming reserves doon sa ilalim. But we are not using this as a basis of developing this country. Ang asset ng Pilipinas, lalong sa ilalim ng lupa, hindi natin kinikwenta. Therefore, kung ikwenta lang natin ito, it will have a big, expansive opportunity. Not only in terms of real production, but also in terms of yung money measures.
But yung ating mga natural resources na untouched or inventory in the subsoil asset, they are assets, but they are natural capital assets. Hindi siya muna nasasama namin sa ngayon. But it is very fortunate that right now, the Philippine Statistics Authority is developing the satellite accounts. So we have environmental accounts. We get to see the stock of natural resources in the Philippines. So we started with minerals, energy, water.
As Indonesia's capital Jakarta sinks at an alarming rate, the country's top architects are facing the daunting task of designing a new sustainable and green capital city in the middle of the world's oldest stretch of jungle. Let's take a look.
Fokus kita dan tantangannya adalah masa depan orangutan yang semakin hari habitatnya semakin merosot. Itu tantangan terberatnya. Karena pertambahan penduduk, kemudian pembangunan infrastruktur itu pasti akan mengurangi satu kawasan di mana keberadaan habitat juga. Itu.
Kalau kita tidak difilter lautnya akan mempengaruhi kepada biota-biota yang ada di laut. Kalau biota lautnya ini sudah terpengaruh, ya habitat-habitat aslinya ini akan berubah juga nanti. Mungkin juga akan pengaruh kepada perkembangan nelayan yang akan mencari.
Orang tua kami dulu sebelum NKRI sudah ada di sini. Jadi kami berharap kepada pemerintah itu yang bisa memperhatikan kehidupan kami ke depan dan yang sekarang. Jangan sampai kami ini kehidupan kami, ketentraman kami terganggu. Gitu.
We realize anything that is forced is usually has consequences. So this is where my concern more is, if we rush this, we may compromise or we may have repercussion at the end.
With an abundance of tasty choices, Asian food remains a consistent and reliable option for many. In Sonoma, California, Eva Basalyahe surveys which culinary delights are the go-to choice when it comes to Asian eats. Eva.
What is your go-to Asian food?
Piggy duck. It's very tasty, you know. They have the wrap and the vegetable and the sauce.
I really like takoyaki. It's a Japanese food. It's like a finger food. Little balls of octopus meat, like kind of enveloped in a pancake mix.
I would say my favorite Asian food is probably sushi. It's kind of more basic. There's just so many different kinds of it, so I think it could appeal to a lot of people.
Noodles.
I know, right? There's so many. You gotta just eat it, and you know why Asian food is good.
I think my favorite Asian food is bulgogi. I absolutely love it. I mean, flavorful, savory. You can actually just have it with rice, and it's just so delicious.
Pancit, adobo, sinigang, sisig, ramen, and sushi, and yakitori, kebabs. There's something about Asian cuisine that's just, it's very powerful. Like the flavors are so strong and bold. I like a lot of other cuisines too, but for just some reason, when I have like Japanese food, Chinese food, and Asian food in general, the flavors are so powerful. Some of the best flavors I've ever had. There's just something about that flavor that has me hooked.
But I like ramen. I just like it. I just tasted it one time and ooh, so good.
I love to order taiyaki, which is octopus ball, and to go with it, you can't go wrong with milk tea boba. Any boba drink. It's one of the best food, in my opinion, over any other culture's food. I love Asian food.
Thai, Korean, Filipino. If it's Asian food, you really can't go wrong. Eva Pasayahe, Pomona, California. Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Thanks, Eva. Avatar: The Way of Water continued to dominate the box office charts, taking in an estimated $15.7 million this weekend in North American theaters to make it the fourth leading global grosser of all time. Take a look. Now, the Disney 20th century sci film, directed by James Cameron, has been #1 for 7 straight weeks, a feat that hasn't been accomplished since Cameron issued the original Avatar in 2009. Industry watcher Exhibitor Relations said on Twitter, hefty results from theaters around the world, including $237 million in ticket sales in China, helped boost The Way of Water to 4th place globally at an all-time high at $2.117 billion unadjusted for inflation. Now that means Cameron now has his name on 3 of the 4 top grossers ever: the original Avatar, Titanic, and The Way of Water. Avengers Endgame from Disney and Marvel sneaks in at second. In second place, meanwhile, for the North American weekend was Universal's family-friendly Puss in Boots and The Last Wish at $10.6 million for the Friday through Sunday period. In the third, up 2 spots from the last weekend, was Sony's Feel Good, A Man Called Otto at $6.8 million. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast of ASEAN in Focus. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.